Pretty much everything we rely on today, from the phone in your pocket to the EV you might be dreaming of, it all runs on lithium. But the way we get this critical mineral is in the middle of this massive shift. It's a technological revolution happening right under our noses that could finally make the backbone of our green economy, well, actually green.
Okay, so we all want this clean, battery-powered future, right? But that brings up a really tough question. To get there, we need an incredible amount of lithium. So what's the real environmental cost of digging all of that up? And that's the big puzzle we're going to dig into.
To really get what's happening, we first need to talk about lithium's dirty little secret. We see it as this key ingredient for a clean energy world. But getting it out of the ground, well, that has a pretty significant and often hidden dark side.
So to really appreciate this revolution, you got to understand the before picture. For decades, the standard way to get lithium from hard rock has been, to put it bluntly, a brute force attack using just insane amounts of heat and some really harsh assets.
It's a real gauntlet. First, you take the ore and roast it at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than lava from some volcanoes. Then, you bake it with sulfuric acid. After that, you gotta leach it, neutralize the acid, and then finally purify the lithium. It's this super complex, multi-step process, and it's just incredibly harsh.
And the price tag for doing it this way is steep. We're talking huge amounts of energy and CO2 just for the heating part. It depends on buying expensive sulfuric acid, which often has to be shipped from halfway across the world. And the leftovers? Nasty, hazardous waste. So bottom line, it's dirty, it's expensive, and man, is it slow.
But what if there was a better way? This is where the story gets really interesting. Researchers started thinking outside the box, and the first big breakthrough that really shook things up was an idea called the alkaline process. And the solution, which you can see in this flowchart here, is actually kind of brilliant in its simplicity. The big idea? Ditch that nasty, expensive sulfuric acid and replace it with something you can find almost anywhere, and for cheap. Limestone.
Look at the difference here. It's night and day. The old way, you pour in harsh acid, you get out hazardous waste. The new alkaline way, you put in simple limestone, and you get out something you can actually use. You're literally turning a problem into a solution.
So, the big question? Did it actually work? Oh yeah, big time. Early tests on this new alkaline method were able to get 84% of the lithium out of the ore. This was the proof of concept. It showed everyone that this acid-free path wasn't just a dream. It was totally doable. But that was just the spark. That first breakthrough kicked off this whole new global race to make the process even better, to find ways that weren't just cleaner, but also way faster and more efficient. And this race led to some frankly incredible results. Take the folks at Penn State. They figured out a method that can get more than 99% of the lithium out of the ore. We are talking about getting basically every single last valuable particle. But here's the really wild part. They can do it in just a few minutes, not the hours or even days the old process took. And they're doing all this without that crazy heat and without harsh acids, just using common things like sodium hydroxide and water. This quote just nails the next leap forward, which comes from, you guessed it, Tesla. They didn't just look at one step. They looked at the whole system and came up with something amazing. So what do? At their new Texas refinery, they've designed a system that actually captures their own CO2 waste and uses it to make soda ash, which is a key ingredient they need anyway. This gets rid of the need to buy and ship chemicals, it cuts their water use, and just like the other new methods, it spits out useful materials instead of toxic waste. It's this beautiful self-contained system. So what are these useful things? Well, materials with names like analcime and anhydrite. So instead of this toxic gunk you have to store somewhere, these new processes create harmless materials you can actually sell for things like making cement and concrete. They literally turned waste into another product. How smart is that?
Okay, so this is way bigger than just some cool chemistry experiment in a lab. This complete reinvention of refining has huge ripple effects across the entire globe, for supply chains, for geopolitics, and for the planet. It's really about refining our future.
And to see why this is such a big deal, you have to look at the world map. For a long time now, one country, China, has been the king of the hill, refining something like 60% of all the world's lithium. And that, my friends, creates a huge strategic bottleneck for everyone else. And this is the really critical takeaway. These new, cleaner, acid-free methods aren't just an environmental win. Because they're cheaper and don't need these complicated global supply chains for chemicals, they basically let other countries build their own refineries, creating a tunnel, a workaround,
right underneath that big geopolitical choke point.
So let's bring it all home. Why should you care about all this? Well, it means we can finally have an EV supply chain that's actually sustainable from start to finish. It means lower costs, which could mean cheaper batteries for all of us. It dials down the political risk, and maybe most importantly, it gives us a blueprint for how to handle all sorts of materials in the future, where you design waste out of the system from the very beginning.
So we've just seen how a shift in chemistry can totally rewrite the rules for an entire global industry, from the dirt in the ground to the car in your driveway. Which really makes you wonder, right? Now that the playbook's been written for lithium, what's going to be the next critical supply chain to be completely transformed?